Okay, I'd say in order to honor the time and to make sure that we leave plenty of time for our two panelists and for questions at the end, we will go ahead and get started. So thank you all for logging in to join this webinar this morning. This, what we're calling the State of the University webinar. It's just kind of an opportunity for Dr. Smith and Dr. Elliott to give us an update on the university, and it's an opportunity for us to ask questions if we have any of them. I do want to let you know that all the participants are muted. However, if you'd like to ask a question during either Dr. Smith or Dr. Elliott's presentations, you can click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and type in your question there. And that way we'll have it, we'll see it and know that it's there. And then at the end, when it gets to question and answer time, I will look through those and address questions accordingly to Dr. Smith or Dr. Elliott, depending on what is being asked. So with that in mind, again, thank you all for being a part of the webinar this morning, and I am going to turn it over to President Tommy Smith to get us started.
Thank you, Tyson, for that and for organizing all of this. Of course, we would much rather be doing this in the Golly Commons over some good, healthy scrambled eggs and sausage and hash browns and grits, but it's the world that we live in, and we do the best we can with this virtual format. I would take just a minute to thank our Alumni Association, Tyson's role, not only with the Alumni Association this year, but his role with all of our alumni, the Advancement Office, for their good work in planning and carrying out homecoming this year. Then our media services folks just do a fantastic job, and we really appreciate all that our media services do, and all the participants we're thankful for. It was good to see Terry Peppel last night leading worship. Some of you may know Terry and I worked together at the Farragut Christian Church 20 years ago, and I don't know what happened, but I got old and Terry remained cool and hip. So appreciate, it's good to see Terry, appreciate his worship team. And Bo Chauncey's message was tremendous last night. And I hope if each of you joined me in praying that prayer this morning, Lord, give me one person to show your love to today. It was a great message, good reminder for us. And I look forward to the rest of the program here at Homecoming. This is not a formal address. When I saw the heading, I went, oh no, that sounds like something that we need a parade and flags and fanfare for. This is a very loose time, just an update of what's going on. And what I'm going to say this morning certainly isn't exhaustive. I would like to tell you of all the good things that are happening on our Johnson University campuses. But I want to say just a few things about our COVID experience, because I think that's at the forefront of everybody's mind. We've got some new initiatives, and some of them hot off the press. Some of them, this is the first time publicly that we're going to announce those. So I'll talk a little bit about our new initiatives, and then I'll introduce Dr. Elliott to you, and he can talk a bit about Florida. So that's the plan for the next little bit for us. Of course, the number one issue on our minds is COVID-19. And back in March of 2020, which seems years ago now, we of course went to remote education for the rest of the spring semester. Basically didn't close the campus down completely, but seriously restricted access. Many of us worked at home for a long time, and so it started our experience with COVID-19. We developed a response around two key priorities. Number one was the health, safety, and well-being of all of our Johnson communities, and our students, our faculty, our staff, our campus families, our partners. We wanted to make sure that we guarded the health, safety, and well-being of all of our constituencies. And then secondly, to make sure we focus on the long-term viability of the university. It is our responsibility to make sure that the mission, the wonderful, worthy mission of this school continues into the future. And so whatever we did short-term, whatever decisions, policies, procedures we made short-term, we always did those in light of the long-term stability, long-term financial stewardship, a long-term vision of the school, and to make sure we didn't do anything short-term that would hinder the viability of our mission going forward. So those principles drove everything that we did. We developed very detailed. PPP seems to be the acronyms: procedures, policies, and processes. Very detailed guides. We adjusted all of our financial models and budgets and so forth, of course. And then we were able to resume face-to-face instruction, mostly face-to-face instruction in the fall, using a kind of a hybrid model for most of our classes. Our goal was to get to Thanksgiving and finish up the last 3 weeks remotely, and we met our goal. We were so thankful that we were able to work within our capacity on both of our campuses, physical campuses, and finish out the fall semester. However, I think by that last week, four of our 5 fall athletic teams were in quarantine. So we barely made it under the gun before we finished up remotely. And then we started a week later in January to give time for the Christmas spike to dissipate a bit. It didn't, and that worried us, but we've had a very good semester. Students have done what we've asked them to do. That the students have been tremendous. Faculty and staff, they have worked so well within our procedures and policies, and really the fact that we have not had serious capacity issues and illnesses with that. Now that doesn't mean it hasn't affected our community. We've had deaths within our community and connected to folks in our community and very, very serious situations. And so it's not that it has not affected us, but as a campus with our students, we've been able to stay within our plan and stay within our procedures. I checked this morning. We keep a dashboard on the main web page, and for the Tennessee campus, we have zero students in isolation and no test pending at this point. And on the Florida campus, there are 2 that we have in isolation and only 1 test pending. So we are so thankful that we've been able so far to sustain this. We have we of course have access and the ability with testing. We now have on the Tennessee campus the ability to do our testing here on campus of our community here. Florida campus had the wonderful privilege of being across the street from the Osceola County Health Department. And the Osceola County Health Department has been an extremely valuable partner, very helpful in this process for us. We are looking at and hoping and praying that we can get widespread vaccinations in the next several months. The next phase here in Tennessee, and I'm going to have to confess my ignorance in Florida, but in the next phase in Tennessee should include 65 and older or people with underlying. So many of that's going to be helpful. And then the next phase, we think most of our employees can get vaccinated. It's going to be, it's uncertain about our students. They're unfortunately low on the totem pole, even though they live together in dorms, which I do not understand, but I'm not making the policies. But our hope is to get vaccinations for our students over the summer and to be able to return to some semblance of normalcy in the fall. Now, of course, as you know, all that could fall apart tomorrow. We have a brilliant strategy here. We make a plan for the week, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, we make another plan. So isn't that brilliant? Isn't that a brilliant strategy? But that's sort of where we are. We make the best decisions we can make with the information that we have available. We keep the health, safety, and well-being of our students and faculty and staff and community partners at the forefront. And we're concerned about our long-term viability. We are planning on having our spring commencement on the Tennessee campus. We're going to have it on campus this year. It's a little different. We're going to have 2 separate services so we can maintain appropriate social distancing. And then on Florida campus, they'll do it on campus as well. Senior Saints is going to be virtual this year. We just felt like we didn't know enough. We aren't far enough down the road to be able to bring a large number of what is our most vulnerable population onto our campus. So Senior Saints will be virtual. Last year was an excellent program. I think we'll have an excellent program again this year for that. Our summer events, CIY and Fellowship of Christian Athletes camps and some of our church retreats and so forth, we tentatively have a green light on those. But again, with very strict protocols that they have to meet, we have to meet, and we reserve the right if things turn south here in our area to be able to say I'm sorry, but we put health, safety, and well-being ahead of those events. But at this point, we're still planning on trying to hold most of our summer events. Financially, we've tightened our belt, we've adjusted. We haven't, of course, revenue has been down, but we've also been able to save on some expenses. The CARES Act and then now the Supplemental Act from Congress have been very, very helpful to us, and we appreciate that. We're just very, very careful. In terms of enrollment, we had great momentum going into the in the spring of 2020. We were expecting significant upturn, particularly on our Tennessee campus, and we ended up slightly up, a few students up, which is remarkable in the COVID. But we did lose, we estimate 25 to 30 students didn't come because of COVID. That didn't affect our Tennessee campus as badly as it did our Florida campus. And we were down about that many in Florida as well. And so we did take an enrollment hit there, much of that due to the uncertainty around the COVID situation. This coming year is going to be a tough year. We've been able to weather this COVID storm fairly well to this point. We don't know what kind of long-term effects that we're going to see. Our supporters and friends have been very, very generous to help us through this, and we appreciate so much the encouragement that we receive from you all. Well, let me just mention a couple of our new initiatives that we've got going on that I wanted you to know about. One is our Three Rivers Collaborative. And our Three Rivers Collaborative project is a Lilly grant funded project. We received $1 million grant from the Lilly Foundation to fund this effort. It's targeted toward helping churches understand their context, develop strategic plans to address their context, and then help them to implement those plans within their churches. So it's focused on congregational ministry. It's right in the wheelhouse of Johnson University, and we of course congregational ministry is so important to us, and this gives us a really great opportunity to not only benefit from the ability to work with our church partners, but we think it's going to have great kingdom impact as cohorts of churches go through this program and learn to be effective in spreading the gospel in their neighborhoods, in their communities. Mark Nelson has come on staff as the director of that initiative, and many of you know Mark's great work both as a campus as youth minister, then as campus minister, and now as church planter and lead minister of the Crossings Church here in Knoxville. But Mark has come on staff to direct that program. We've got that started, and I think along that program, along with our Vanguard Church program, is going to reaffirm our commitment to local congregations and expand our influence into those congregations. So we look forward to that initiative. We have two new academic programs, and these are hot off the press. These are just approved by our board, and the two new programs are in life sciences and mathematics. And this is a part of our effort to, on one hand, improve our math and science offerings here at Johnson. And so support our students generally in math and science. We live in a world where we need our students very competent in math and science if they're going to speak meaningfully to our culture. And so we expand it that way, but it also helps support many of our other programs. Will certainly help support our health sciences program, our pre-nursing program, which had a great start this year with 11 students in our pre-nursing program, our business programs, and especially our teacher education. This gets us into the STEM world, and we're able to begin programs in STEM education. Our Master of Arts in Teaching will right away take advantage of the math and science majors, and students can get their teacher's licensure and a master's degree in teaching through our programs. So these math and science programs, I think, are going to be very, very important for the development of our academic program here. And then new initiatives, and this is kind of hot off the press too, in our athletics program on the Tennessee campus. We of course have athletic programs on both campuses. This applies to the Tennessee campus, and we are completing a move here to the NAIA, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. The NAIA national team was on our campus 3 weeks ago for their campus visit. It was a great visit, and they assured us that we have met all of the qualifications, and they're eager to welcome us into that group. And we will find out for sure the 1st of May. Their Council of Presidents meets the 1st of May, but their commissioner and the committee was very complimentary toward our programs here. And then we also had a committee from the Appalachian Athletic Conference, which would be the conference we would be participating in. And that was 2 weeks ago, and had a great visit. They will vote on March the 8th on our membership into the AAC. And it includes schools like Milligan, many of you know Bryan, Tennessee Wesleyan, Kentucky Christians in that conference, Point Universities in that conference. So many of our sister schools and our peer institutions are in that conference. And this is going to be a great plus in our athletics, not only in terms of the excellence of our athletics programs, but it's going to help us to be able to utilize our athletic recreation center better. It's going to help us support our student athletes better. And so we look forward to that move to NAIA. So those are just some of the new things that are happening on campus, and much more. It's a dangerous thing to ask a president to talk about his university, because I am so proud of our faculty, our staff, our programs, most of all our mission, and the strong history and tradition. So it doesn't take much to get me going in talking about Johnson, but I will button up and give others the opportunity. Well, Johnson University, Florida, as you know, we are now in our 8th year. That merger started in 2013. This past year, we said goodbye to Mike Chambers, Dr. Mike Chambers, who was the executive vice president for the Florida campus for about four or five of those years, and he retired. It's been hard to honor him appropriately with everything virtually, but we were able to honor him at commencement, and then, of course, last night we were able to honor him with the Alumni Association Distinguished Service Award, and I would be remiss not to say another word of appreciation to Dr. Chambers for all of his fine work there on the Florida campus. But we welcome a new executive vice president, Dr. Marvin Elliott, began his work with us in March. Yes, he was on campus the week before the COVID interruption hit. So he is, talk about a rocky start. It interrupted everything that we had planned to do. And then he's been the executive vice president on the Florida campus since July 1st. And he and his wife, Debbie, have, of course, moved to the Kissimmee area and are working there on the Florida campus. He comes to us immediately from Kentucky Christian University, where he was the executive vice president and academic dean there at Kentucky. I must say that he is from Carter County, Tennessee. He's from God's country too. And even though he and I did not know each other growing up, he's considerably younger than I am. His parents, of course, were members at First Christian Church, and he was members at First Christian Church, and that was the home church for my grandparents and my mother as well. So we've had long connections in Upper East Tennessee, and we're glad that he's with us. But I'm going to turn things over to Marvin to be able to talk to us about the Florida campus. Marvin.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I appreciate that. Now, he said that I was much younger. What is it, 2 years or a year and a half, something like that. But I bring you greetings this morning on behalf of our campus in Kissimmee, Florida. I can't even brag about how warm it is in Kissimmee this morning because I'm actually sitting in a guest apartment on the Tennessee campus right now. I've been here this week for our Board of Trustees meeting, and then not long after we finish this session, I'll be heading to the airport. As Tommy mentioned, my wife and I, Debbie is my wife. She's a school teacher. She's in class this morning, but we only moved to Kissimmee last summer, so we're still working on our first year at Johnson, Florida, and what a year it's been. As he said, I started work for Johnson last March. I was going to start with 6 weeks here on the Tennessee campus for orientation or indoctrination. And just a few days after I started, we sent everyone home to work. So Debbie and I actually spent my first months working for Johnson from our home near Boone, North Carolina, where neither of us were born, but we call home. And then we moved to Kissimmee last summer during a little bit of a lull in the COVID pandemic. That pandemic, of course, has dominated this academic year. All in all, we've been quite fortunate. I'll express my sympathy to our alumni, faculty, staff, and students who have lost loved ones or lost friends to the virus. But we have had a rather minimal number of infections on the Florida campus, in spite of being in the middle of one of the hottest of the hot spots at various times over the past year. You know, COVID may be the topic that has dominated the past year, and it certainly has, but it has not prevented us from being involved in the educational ministry that we are called by God to do. And our students, as Dr. Smith said, they put on the mask, they've kept their distance, and they've devoted themselves to their studies. And I just applaud how resilient our students have been. One of the highlights of the year for me was celebrating with our May 20 graduates when we were finally able to host a commencement service in October. It was a high point of the year, celebrating in person with our graduates and with a few family members or friends that each of the graduates were able to invite. It was our prayer last fall that we could maintain in-person classes until Thanksgiving break and then finish the 3 remaining weeks of the semester online between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And God honored our good efforts and answered that prayer. When our students left for Grandma's house and Thanksgiving break, they didn't return until mid-January. I was personally disappointed in December when we were unable to have our normal Night of Noel program. It's our biggest production of the year normally, and I had watched it online the previous December, knowing that I would be physically present, or thinking I would be physically present and involved in it the following year. But 2020 didn't make things easy for any of us. And I still haven't experienced that Night of Noel in person the way so many of you watching this session probably have. But our online version, called Simply Christmas, was one of the best things about my Christmas season. Debbie and I watched the live stream program with a small number of friends in a big room in the Commons on the Florida campus. It was an impressive program that featured one of my favorite graduates of Johnson, Florida, Andrew Peterson. You know, I checked last night, and that program is still online on the Johnson website. So if you're one of those people who watch Christmas movies all winter and into the spring, you might like to review Simply Christmas or even see it for the first time. You'll find it on our website. It's easy, johnsonu.edu/Simply Christmas. College students are generally ready to come back to school in January in a normal year, but it seems like they were especially ready to return last month after being home since before Thanksgiving. We came back to campus a week late, wearing masks and again, keeping our distance, but we came back grateful for the opportunity to be together once again. COVID has had a lot of impact on our campus, but not everything has come to a halt. We've prioritized classes, of course, but we've been able to pull off a few other activities. Athletics have continued on a modified basis. We played an extremely short men's soccer season last fall, thankful for the freedom that outdoor sports afford. Basketball season is just wrapping up now. Our men played their very last regular season game just last night. I was able to watch it online. We got the win. Able to watch it online from here on the Tennessee campus. Both our men's and women's teams left early this morning for the regional basketball tournament in Toccoa Falls, Georgia, where our men's team is seated number 1 and our women's is a little bit lower, 4 or 5, I think. You know, that live stream that I watched last night has become so important to us during the COVID era. Only a few fans have been permitted in the stands for basketball, 2 guests invited by each of the home team members, and then no more than 15 faculty, staff, and students who are selected by a drawing for each game. All the rest of us have figured out how to watch the live stream on our phones or even on the big screen at home. Some of the normal campus activities like special dinners or banquets have actually been held on our Florida campus, but moved outdoors. I've come, as someone who spent most of his life in Tennessee and North Carolina, I've come to appreciate just how comfortable it can be outdoors, even in the middle of the winter. And we've taken advantage of that on the Florida campus. Another activity that's been modified somewhat, but is still happening, is church relations and other advancement activity. You know, we've not visited many individuals in their homes. That just hasn't seemed wise. But my wife and I are trying our best to get to know our church partners. Since we moved to Florida last May, we've made 43 visits to 38 different churches. We've been ultra careful. We've worn a mask every single Sunday, everywhere we went, even if we're the only ones in the building wearing masks. I guess we've done something right because we've made 43 visits to churches and neither one of us have gotten sick with COVID. It's been a real pleasure for me to make so many new friends across Florida as we've traveled. Our supporters, both churches and individuals, have been so faithful, even during this pandemic. And all of us at Johnson on both campuses are truly grateful. And while so many churches and ministries have struggled, I'm thrilled to report that for the Florida campus, our giving has actually been up just a tiny bit over last year. It's a testimony to God's faithfulness. It's a testimony to the generosity of so many individuals who invest in the educational ministry in which Johnson engages. On behalf of all of us at Johnson, I express my appreciation to you with the words of Paul to the Philippians as he affectionately wrote of his gratitude in Philippians chapter 1. Paul said, "I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." So to each of you, thank you again for your partnership in the gospel. I know that so many of you have such a genuine affection for our school, and we're grateful for all the ways that you express that feeling. You know, my own association with Johnson is both recent and also quite old. Although I've graduated from more schools than you need to hear about, including 2 of our sister Stone Campbell movement schools, neither of those were Johnson. But my respect for Johnson is as old as I am. More than 100 years ago, my great-grandfather prepared for the preaching ministry by studying through correspondence courses with Ashley S. Johnson and the School of the Evangelist. He was a farmer and circuit riding preacher in the hills and mountains of East Tennessee and Western North Carolina. J.W. Edwards, my great-grandfather, was only one of the thousands and thousands of young men and women who have prepared for the preaching ministry and worship ministry, for teacher education, for counseling, and a host of other areas on our campuses in Tennessee, in Florida, and online. So I'm proud to be a part of that legacy, and I thank you for your part in both the past and in the future to continue that Johnson tradition. So God bless each of you, and thank you for being present at this homecoming session today. I'll throw the baton back to Tyson and let him pick up from here.
Dr. Smith and Dr. Elliott, thank you very much for spending the time with us this morning, giving us those brief glimpses and updates of what's going on. So far, we haven't had any questions come through on our Q&A panel, but if anybody would like to ask a question, I certainly encourage you to go to that Q&A tab at the bottom on the Zoom screen and submit your question there. And we'll respond to those and make sure that we pass those along to Dr. Smith or Dr. Elliott as appropriate. While we're waiting for folks to type in questions, though, Dr. Smith, would you mind just giving a little bit more of an insight into maybe some reasons, some benefits for this shift to NAIA?
Yes, be glad to, Tyson. There's sort of two major motivations. One is our experience in our current athletic association, the National Christian College Athletic Association. As that association has lost a number of schools over the past several years, either from a lot of small colleges closing or from larger colleges, much like ours, moving to NAIA. There are fewer and fewer schools. The regions in those schools, in that athletic association, just keeps getting larger and larger. And so in our region, for example, we have 2 schools from Michigan, 2 schools from Kentucky, a school from West Virginia, and Middle Tennessee. Our students are having to drive 9, 10, 11 hours to play games. And it's a lot of time away from class. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of expense. And so we just recognize that we could not continue in the NCCAA because of those problems. Those were there are other things, but that was the major problem. It had to do with scheduling and travel and cost and students away from class. We explored going NCAA Division III, primarily because that's a non-scholarship division. But as we continue to explore, as we did an in-depth dive into that, we really did not feel at home, particularly as a Christian institution in NCAA Division III. It was going to cost us a lot more than we thought it was going to, and we just didn't feel good about some of the culture issues in NCAA. And so we began looking at the move to NAIA, which would include athletic institutional aid for athletics. So the first motivation had to do with our, we really could not continue well in NCCAA, but we also wanted to up our level of excellence. The schools that we are competing with athletically, these are our peer schools. These are our aspirant schools. And we want excellent programs that compete with those. We're competing with them for students now. We have a facility in the ARC that is second to none. When we enter the Appalachian Athletic Conference, we'll have the best facility in the conference. And so we wanted to make sure that we could also up the excellence level of all of our sports. And so we developed an institutional aid model that does not devote any new money to athletic scholarships. We were able to take the scholarship funds and the scholarship monies as we have them, following all of our procedures and policies, and we were able to shift some of those funds to be able to support athletics. And so we will be giving institutional aid to athletics, but it's the same institutional aid that they were eligible for last year. It's just in a different package, a different way of thinking about that. And it still follows all of our values regarding institutional aid and all of our procedures with institutional aid. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. It enables us to, in a responsible way, offer institutional aid to student athletes who will have a better student experience in NAIA, and it will improve the overall excellence of our programs here at Johnson.
Great, thank you for that. Still seeing no questions. I'll throw one more out there, and I think both of you all can answer this. I don't know that folks know well the Vanguard Church program, and so I'm wondering if you can maybe give some insight as to how that's benefited each of the schools, or what they might want to know or need to know about that for the sake of the church that they're involved in.
Well, I'll begin, Marvin, and then if you have a comment, I'll let you tag on to the end. The Vanguard Church program, and we really need Brian Lake in here to talk, but he's the expert in this. It was just a recognition that we often go to churches asking for things. Will you support us here? Will you do this for us? We want them to send us their students. We want them to send us their money, God's money, for God's mission and purpose. And it seemed like that in some cases it felt like we had a one-way relationship with our churches, and we want to be a good church partner. And so the Vanguard Church Partner not only creates a relationship between the university and the church, but it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And so yes, we encourage financial support, and we want them to send their students to us. But we also provide scholarshiping for those students. There are opportunities for their staff to get education at a reduced rate. There's opportunities for workshops and seminars and so forth. So it's a way for us to create a two-way partnership with our churches and our congregations. I wish Brian were here. He could tell us how many, but we now have several. Do you know the number now, Tyson? I should have looked that up.
I do not have that number.
Okay,
no.
but we have a number of churches now that have entered into that agreement with the Vanguard Church Partnership, and it's a growing program. And again, it reflects two things. One, it reflects our commitment to congregational ministry. Yes, in the last 20 years, we have developed many of these strategic vocations, these strategic programs that educate students for professions outside of congregational ministry. But that doesn't mean we've lessened in any way our commitment to congregational ministry. We're still educating more students for local church ministry than we ever have. We can do both. We should do both, because both are kingdom work and equally important kingdom work. But the Vanguard Partnership is able to express that value in a very tangible way.
Dr. Elliott, would you like to add anything to that?
I don't think I have anything to add. Dr. Smith covered it very well. It's an important program. And it's an important program for our churches in Florida and all over the country. So we welcome additional inquiries and discussions with churches about how that partnership can benefit both the university and churches.
I can tell you that hot off the presses, I just got the number that we currently have 26 Vanguard churches.
Good.
So I'm assuming that's a combination, but there you go. That's the number. We did have one question come in, and I think this kind of touches on something, Dr. Smith, that you mentioned earlier. But Ed Blythe was asking if there's any plans by the university to keep the same degrees offered, any plans to expand or contract degree programs, any additional items to add related to the mode of delivery, in person, online, those kinds of things. So if you'll just kind of briefly summarize what you mentioned earlier, that might be good.
Okay, good. Thank you, Ed. That's a good question. We are constantly evaluating, assessing the effectiveness of our existing programs and the relevance of our existing programs. And we're always asking the next question is, what are the challenges that, to extend God's kingdom among all nations? What are the programs that we need to look at? So that's an ongoing process. That means sometimes we close programs, and we do close programs occasionally that have not been effective or have not met the need that we wanted them to need, so that we can put the resources into programs that do. In general, of course, our programs center around the two primary professional areas: Christian ministries and strategic vocations. And I think philosophically, we are committed to continuing to see those as equally important in kingdom work. And so we're going to continue to develop programs in Christian ministries. I think and strategic vocations. In Christian ministries, some of the things, we've got a group now studying multicultural ministry and preparing students to work in congregations that are multicultural, and it's where our culture is. It's not necessarily where our churches are right now. And so I know that there's discussions about that. We also are looking at and talking a lot about training ministers for bivocational ministry. We think that increasingly in the future, it's already happening, that many people in located ministry are bivocational. And that's actually the model for many churches. And how can we support and help those? And then, of course, ministry in the local church continues to be diverse in the kinds of ministries. And so, yes, we're still going to have preaching and church leadership and youth ministry, but you recognize also children's ministry and counseling ministry and worship ministry and administrative ministry and so forth and so on. We're just constantly trying to keep evaluating that to make sure that we're keeping up with the relevant trends in terms of, and in terms of strategic vocations. What we've said with those is a strategic vocation is an area that we've identified first as a place where we need strong Christian leadership to spread the gospel. And then secondly, it's within our capacity to do. We don't want to choose a program that's really outside of our capacity as a school. And so one of the things that I thought was important when I came in as president is that we improve in our areas of math and science. And that was not only for our students in general, but we now have several programs that we need higher levels of math and science. Our pre-nursing program, our business accounting programs, our sport and fitness programs, and especially teacher education. If you're not in the STEM world, science, technology, engineering, and math, if you're not in that world in teacher education, you're out of it. You are not relevant to the educational world. And as you know, we have had an excellent education department here for many years, but this is another step that we need to take. So that's why the math and science, and I suspect we'll continue to look in areas. I think in terms of strategic vocations for the near future, I think the future for us is in healthcare kinds of programs. Great demands for jobs in healthcare. We've just gotten our feet wet with our pre-nursing program. We have an associate in health sciences and an agreement with Tennessee Wesleyan University that our associate's degree students would be accepted into their nursing program. So they would do their first 2 years here at Johnson and then do their actual nursing program with Tennessee Wesleyan, while at the same time remaining students at Johnson. So they can live in the dorm and eat in our cafeteria and participate in our chapel and all that, even while they're at Tennessee Wesleyan. So that's our first program in health sciences. And I think we'll be looking at how to expand our health sciences. So I think those are some of the kinds of programs that are on the horizon.
All right. So we have just a very short time left. Several more questions came in, so I'm going to give you the chance to give quick hit answers. Ed Blythe followed up asking if there's any chance of an MDiv online. You can
I
say.
would. I was clicking on the questions and I wasn't paying attention, Tyson. I'm sorry. I wish I had our dean of the School of Bible. We certainly have talked about that and MDiv, and I don't know where to be honest with you, I don't know where the current discussion about that is. We have our Masters in New Testament, and I know that there have been discussions about how we can do a revision of that program. It may not be to the level of an MDiv, but would offer different kinds of concentrations. But I know that the MDiv online has been discussed for several years. And I don't know where that current discussion is. I'm sorry, Ed, that I can't answer your question.
Okay. Any updates on the status of Alumni Memorial Chapel? Apparently having that picture in my background inspired the question.
Well, here we employed last year a group called Partners Associates who are helping us develop a master plan for the Tennessee campus. Now, we've also got a master plan for the Florida campus, but this group is helping us with the master plan for the Tennessee campus. And we received their initial report in March. And then, of course, you know what happened. So we've had to put all of the master planning on hold because of that. This is all speculation. So don't take this as any kind of pronouncement. This still remains just speculation. What we would like to do, the Alumni Memorial as a building has to come down. We cannot safely use that facility. It has too many structural problems. And of course, the old gym and the pool, that's all been closed because of the ark as well. And so we know that those two buildings at least are going to have to come down as a part of any kind of redevelopment of that up there. We want to find a way, of course, to not only save, but use Old Main. And so a part of that initial plan that Partners gave to us, they would take Clark Hall off the back of Old Main and build an addition to Old Main with elevators and restrooms and access. The problem with Old Main is there's one bathroom, a very, very small bathroom for the entire building. There's no ADA accessibility. It is basically unusable for classrooms and so forth. Now we use it for some purposes, but not for much. So we would upgrade Old Main to be able to use it. And we could do classrooms, we could do centers. There are a lot of things we could do with Old Main there. And then what to do with the rest, we don't know. We've talked about a smaller chapel on the hill that would preserve at least the front of Old Main. We talked with Partners about whatever we do up there, the ability to keep maybe even a facade up there. So when you look up the hill, you still see that iconic view of the steeple over the campus. But whether that's going to be an academic building, whether it's going to be green space, we really don't know. My feeling, and again, this is not a pronouncement. This is just me talking. I think our next need in terms of capital projects is to do something with Old Main and to do something with our library. I would like to see us convert our library into a learning commons, which would include access to our library resources, but would also create a more community experience for the library. As you can imagine, the traditional library has changed tremendously. Our students get more books online than they do a physical book. And so I think there are ways to create a really interesting learning commons there. Now, what that would do again with the Hill and with Chapel, I don't know. That's still vague out in the future.
Okay, just about 2 minutes left, and then we need to let people get over to the main session if they want to join that. So one question that I don't know if you can answer in 2 minutes, but we're going to give you a shot at it. Don Crane has asked about the diversity initiative and wonders if there's been good interest or any resistance.
Well, what we, as you all know, diversity, equality, inclusion is even in spite of COVID, is the number1 issue in higher education right now. If you look at Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Ed, all of the publications, all of our accrediting associations, all of our university associations, anybody who's in higher ed, at the top of the list of issues in higher ed are diversity, equality, and inclusion. And then certainly it's on the mind of everybody because of all the events of the summer, particularly, and concerns for racial justice and so forth moving forward. And so the question is not, are you going to deal with diversity? You're going to deal with it regardless. The question is, how are you going to deal with diversity? And what we have said here is diversity is a central part of our mission. And whatever we're going to do on diversity, it's got to be grounded in our mission. Our mission is to extend the kingdom of God among all nations. And that among is intentional. And we're not here to go to the nations as if we somehow are on one side and they're on the other. We're not for the nations, we're among the nations. And in order to be among the nations, we have to model and develop cultural awareness and cultural competencies that the kingdom of God is for every tribe, every tongue, every nation, every person. That to be among all nations means that we celebrate diversity and we celebrate God's diversity. But we do that based on our mission. If you look at our diversity commitment that's on the website and that we've in several other places, you will see that commitment is grounded in our mission. And whatever we do in diversity efforts, we have to make sure that it is tied to our mission. So that is the central principle that guides all that. But I will say it's difficult. All the diversity issues are hard, and we're learning. I've said this in many cases. There was a time when we as an institution were so isolated from the world, in a sense, nobody cared what we thought about diversity. We're no longer isolated. We have meaningful community partnerships in so many ways. It does matter how we approach. And from my perspective, my commitment is not only to the mission of the school, but it's to our students. And we have an increasingly large number of students of color on both campuses. Marvin could speak to this. On the Florida campus, our freshman class last year, 78% of those students were students of color. Heavily Latino, mostly Latino, but also African American. And we must take good care of those students. We've got to be a welcoming, safe, meaningful place for them to prepare to fulfill God's mission for their own lives. And so So all of our diversity issues, we want to make sure that we're reflecting our mission and that we're taking good care of our students, especially our students of color. Have we done everything right? No, we haven't. We're going to make mistakes, and we will make mistakes in the future because we're learning how to do something that is very difficult for us as human beings to learn how to do. But we're committed to doing it God's way. We're committed to defining diversity in a biblical way. And I would encourage you to, our Bible faculty just recently did a professional development for our faculty and staff on multiculturalism in the Bible to lay a biblical foundation for diversity. We do not define diversity as many in the world define diversity. And we're very careful that we maintain our biblical convictions while at the same time learning the important lessons that we need to learn about diversity, equality, justice, and inclusion of others. And I could talk a long time. Sorry, Tyson, for taking probably more minutes than you wanted me to take.
I think we're going to have to close out now. The main session is starting, so we'll go ahead and release everybody to join the main session. Dr. Smith and Dr. Elliott, thank you so much for spending your time.
Thank you. I'm seeing all these names. I'm seeing all these names on the participants, and I want to hug you all. I'm sorry we can't be together.
Thank you, all of you.
All right. Well, God bless you all. This will be recorded. You guys can catch it later. And in the meantime, jump over to johnsonu.edu/homecoming and join in the live session this morning. We'll see you later. Thank you.